Here we are. So county redistricting. We'll explain more about this little diagram, but I can tell you it's Lumberton. Yes. So the roadmap. So we're not, you may have heard a little bit about redistricting in the legislature and the Congress, but there's more to it. So there's all kinds of things to get redistricted, and they will all in theory be redistricted next year. That means not only the county commissions, but town and city councils and board of elections and anything else that needs to be redistricted except possibly water districts. So why do we want to study this? And how does it actually work? To talk a little bit about the who and the how, and I must say we're just studying this now, so if anyone's an expert in this, they're welcome also to chime in if I screw up, which could happen. We're going to look at what the commissions, how they're actually structured, which varies quite a bit across the state, and then some of the issues that we're going to be looking at, because we're going to be doing a white paper project and studying in particular some of the issues such as at-large districts, the racial and gender balance, and the process for redistricting and transparency, as in any redistricting work. And over here, you see on the right, you see the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. We're doing a little case study, as I mentioned, that Tyler will be presenting. So local redistricting is a thing. And I picked this picture on the right because in Egypt, they have a saying that in local government, corruption is knee-deep. So I thought I would use that picture to illustrate that concept. So like I say, counties, municipalities, school boards, everything gets redistricted. And that means that everything can be gerrymandered. And this is North Carolina, so local governments draw their own boundaries at all levels, and the legislature can intervene. And there are lots of lawsuits, many of which are over race, and there's not a whole lot of transparency in what happens at these lower levels, which is partly why I think if we all get educated, we can hopefully do something about that. So but why study this topic at all? Well, for one thing, commissions do a lot of things that are very important to citizens, including, although they do not run the elections, as we know, they provide funding. So that is a key sort of locus of control. And they really, this topic has not been studied very much. There are a few things that I've been able to find, but very little. And I've asked around in other states, and no one has really come up with much. But we think this is a possible entry point for engaging local voters. And I'll talk a little bit more about why we think that's the case later on. And then we also want to get ourselves ready to provide support to encourage citizen involvement in 2021. So this lovely diagram is a picture of a typical Board of County Commissioners, what it looks like. Those things on the right there, the school board, the Register of Deeds, and the sheriff are independent from the Board of Commissioners, although they do have some influence, again, particularly through the question of budgeting. But down at the bottom, I've tried to kind of highlight some of the things that I think are of most interest to citizens, so social services, public health, which we've suddenly found as a lot more interesting than we thought, the library, election dollars, as I say, a lot of county taxes, school funding, parks, and the perennial topic at the local level, zoning. One of the things I've learned in working in local government in other countries is that it always comes down to the land. Who controls it, who can use it, what they can use it for. That's a really critical issue in local development, always. So districting models, and I want to apologize in advance, this is going to be, I hope it won't be too boring, but it's going to be like, I think this will be new to a lot of people, let me put it that way. And there are several different district structure options. They can have single members, which is but there's one representative per district, as is the case in the legislature, as you know. They can have multiple members per district, as is the case of some judicial districts around the state. When you see vote for 2 or vote for 3 or whatever, that's a sign that it's a multi-member district. And then there's purely at large, where there are multiple members on the commission, of course, but they all represent the whole jurisdiction. And an example that you would definitely be familiar with is the Supreme Court, where we all vote for all of the Supreme Court members, in rotation. And then they serve the whole state. There are no districts in the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals for that matter. There's also something called residence districts, which are also called districts at large. In this case, the people running must live in the district, but all of the voters across the jurisdiction vote on them. And since I thought that might be confusing, I put together this little diagram. So on the left, and these are, you'll notice that all of my commissioners are white men, and you might think, oh, well, this is not, politically correct, but actually it just reflects reality. So the single member districts, again, they run from individual districts, as shown there. Districts at large, or residence districts, they have to live in their district, but they run district-wide. And then there are multi-member districts where there's more than one person in a district. And then at large, where they just run county-wide, period, and the top vote getters, whoever they are, fill all the open positions. And the single member districts and the at large can be combined. And in fact, where they can also be combined to some extent with multi-member districts. So you can have some that are elected at large and some that are elected from districts. So then there's also different ways to vote on these guys. There's just regular voting, where you vote for as many candidates as there are positions, such as vote for one or vote for three, whatever. There's also something called limited voting, where because of some of the problems with at-large, some counties have adopted or been required by the court to adopt a system of limited voting, where you vote for fewer candidates than there are positions. So, for example, there might be 3 seats open, but you only get 1 or 2 votes. And that is to prevent, in particular, the majority from basically sweeping all of the seats and making it impossible for smaller groups to really concentrate on a candidate or 2 candidates, whatever, and be able to hopefully get better representation on the commission. There are other methods that are out there, but they're pretty rare. I mean, there's like, when the School of Government did a listing from which a lot of this information comes, of the different kinds of systems that are out there in the different counties and in fact municipalities. And there are something like 8 different systems, and as well as they had to go into, like, I think 12 footnotes to be able to cover all the exceptions. So, for example, some weirdo counties have a different system in the primary and the general. And there's some where, for example, the top vote getter gets a 4-year term, and the guys who come in second get a 2-year term. Huh, okay. So here's Orange County, an easy example. And it was actually a question from Orange County that got me thinking, county redistricting. What an interesting question. So our commission here has 7 members. There's 1 district for Chapel Hill Carborough down there in the southeast. And that line is sort of hypothetical, but it's more or less like that. They're elected, 3 members are elected at large in that district, which counts for 60% of the population. And then there is a district 2 for the rest of Orange County. They get 2 commissioners, and they're also elected at large, but only by the voters in District 2. And then there are 2 who are elected at large in the whole county. And they have staggered terms, which is quite common. So you vote for some one election, and then the next election, vote for the rest of them. And to me, and one of the things that I haven't quite figured out, and maybe we could discuss it, is I live in Chapel Hill, and we have 3 members. So I get to vote over the course of the full cycle, the 2 elections. I get to vote for all 3 of them. And I also get to vote for all of the at-large people. So that's 5 votes. I get 5 votes in determining who is on the commission. Conversely, as an individual voter. However, if you live in District 2, you live in Hillsborough, the county seat, or Eflin or whatever, you only get 4 votes. You get your 2 at-large and you get your 2 District 2 members. So I'm not quite sure how that's in compliance with 1 person, 1 vote, but that's what it is. So, so overall, the counties have, they have, as you can see, all these different systems. The most common by far is at-large and districts at large, where they live in the district and run at large, and combinations of some districts and some at-large. There are only 14 that have pure districts, which is the league's recommended format. We recommend single-member districts and have for many years. There are also some that have districts and at-large with the residency requirement. There are 3 that have a limited voting plan. Bladen has its own system, naturally, and there's 1 that has limited voting, but they elect them at large. So altogether, some type of at-large, the 82 of the 100 counties have had that, and real at-large, which is to say at-large itself, districts at large, and at-large of limited voting, 61 of the counties have that. So they are not, I know it's just shocking to know this, but they are not following the lead recommendation yet. So what do the boards look like? Well, this is a different this this data comes from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, and it only goes back to 74, which is quite a ways. I'm not criticizing, but that's why this ends in 74. And you can see that the total seats have increased by more than 100, like almost 20%. I'm not quite sure why. Over time, as along with a lot of other things, the Democrats have lost, used to have ridiculous level of control over the boards in terms of members, but now that has dramatically changed, and the independents have also made an appearance in the past few elections, at least starting in 2000. However, the number of people who are challengers and take over, or are newly elected, are new commissioners, in other words, has fallen significantly from 157 in 74, so a little bit less than a third, to 97, which is way less. It's just like not even a fifth. And the number of women was pathetic in 1974, as was the number of Black members. There were only 17 women. There were only 13 Black members on the commissions, and on the case of the Black Black commissioners, that has increased substantially. You can see down at the bottom, they have gone from 2.7% to 19.8%, which is close, sort of close at least, to the percentage of the population. It's still short of it. Meanwhile, women have only gone from 0.9% to 4.9%, which is, needless to say, way short of our presence in the population. And there are a handful of Native Americans, and if you're saying, why aren't there anything for Asians or Latinx? Well, it's because there aren't any. And as I say, the control of the boards has gone from 86 democratically controlled boards to only 41, and the GOP has, of course, the rest of them, 56. So which counties use which system? I'm not going to go over this in detail, believe me. But there is very evident that there is a regional differentiation between the sort of more or less Piedmont and the lower level coastal areas of the state, as opposed to the upper Piedmont and the mountains, where at-large is really super common. It's much more mixed in the lower areas. And as it happens, we're going to be focusing more on the lower areas, although I made this map in part for myself, because I wanted to know, I had picked some counties, which I'll talk about, to study in more depth, but I wanted to know where they fit into the system. So what's the problem? Well, the real problem is multi-member districts and gerrymandering, both. As I say, the league's had a policy for many years, I'm not sure how long, for single-member districts, and multi-member districts or at-large districts can pose barriers to electing minority candidates, and especially where voting is polarized, so that you have a difference in particular between, but basically what that means is that white voters will not vote for Black candidates. That's really what that comes down to in North Carolina. And the majority voters can then line up behind their candidates and take all of them if they have a strong majority and they're voting countywide, and freeze out minority candidates. And they have also, multi-member districts have often been found to be unconstitutional, especially in the South. For example, North Carolina's Jones County was forced to change because of they're using multi-member districts that were found to be unconstitutional. There have been several other cases across the South in particular. And here's a little example of Robeson County of what looks to me like gerrymandering. I didn't try to run the numbers. On the right, you see the map, and just looking at it, it looks suspicious. If you look particularly at that blue district along the bottom that kind of reaches up to grab 3 different towns. And that also looks very much to me like something that used to be part of one of their legislative districts. And we'll see this also in Forsyth. But you also see that yellow district kind of in the middle that seems to wrap around. But the real issue here is Lumberton, where, and so you see the little blowout on the left, and the black line is the border of Lumberton, and which is the county seat, of course, and by far the largest city. It has 20,000 out of the total county population of 131,000, more or less. So the ideal district size, if they have, 8 districts, divide that up, you get 16,000, more or less. So that most of Lumberton could fit into one district. You could definitely have a district that was all Lumberton and another that had a substantial part of Lumberton, but instead it's been cracked into 4 districts. And although I did not, like I say, pull the racial data, I would not be even a teensy-weensy bit surprised to find that was a problem here. So the Forsyth case study. So let me, if I escape out of here, does it stop recording? Well, you can, I don't know.
It should keep recording.
Okay. So then I'll escape out of here, or you can just share your screen.
Yeah, I think that'll be easier.
Yeah. So are you, oops, let me get back in there. There we go. Okay, there we go.
Hold on one second. Oh, oops. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Forsyth County, Winston-Salem is obviously the largest population with almost 250,000 people. A majority of the county lives in Winston-Salem. And then you have some surrounding suburbs, Kernersville, Clemens, and Louisville, and then some smaller towns in the northwestern part of the county. And if you look at this slide, this shows the demographics. So you can see where people live, and you can see that the eastern part of Winston-Salem is very heavily Black and Latino, while the western side is more predominantly white, and then the surrounding county, Louisville, Kernersville, Clemens, and then up into the northwest going towards Stokes and Surrey County, that is also predominantly white. If we look at this income map, you see a very similar setup. It almost parallels the racial map. And the darker color means the higher the income level. So you can see eastern part of Winston-Salem is the income levels are much less than in the western part of the city, and then over into parts of Kernersville in the east, and it almost goes around kind of like a half circle if you do around Winston-Salem here. And notice on the western part of Winston-Salem over here, over towards Haynes Mall and Thruway Center, that area is much has a much higher income level than the eastern part over around Winston-Salem State University, and going back in that direction. So if you look at the county commissioner districts, and that's what this is, it kind of parallels those other 2 maps. You can see District B actually wraps around the entire county, and District A is embedded completely within District B. And which when I initially saw this is what caught my eye. I thought that was really weird that you'd have a district that wraps around the county like that. District A, at closer examination, is a majority minority district. What the map drawers did is they packed the majority of Black and Latino voters into District A. And it's only 32% or 33% white. So District A is 24% more Black than the county as a whole. And it is 34% less white than the county as a whole. And also this district skews highly Democratic. It's based off of Dave's redistricting app, which I used to get these statistics. I recreated the districts in the app. You can see that the district is very heavily Democratic. And only 5 of District A's 32 precincts were not majority minority precincts. District B, on the other hand, is predominantly white, and it is 11% more white than the county as a whole, and 14% more or less Black than the county as a whole. And you can see it skews Republican, not as heavily as District A skews Democratic, but it definitely leans Republican. And also notice that District B is larger than District A. District A is actually about a third of the size of District B. And this also caught my eye. The commission is set up with these rules. So you have 6 commissioners that are elected from 2 multi-member districts, and you have 1 commissioner that is elected at large. So folks in District B can elect 4 commissioners to represent them in addition to the at-large member, while people in District A can only elect 2 commissioners. And in addition to the at-large commissioner, which again, I thought that was really odd because people in District A, similar to what Jennifer discussed in Chapel Hill, people in District A simply don't have as much of a voice if you can't, you don't have as many commissioners that you can elect. And this slide, I think, really tells a story. If you look at how the map in the upper left-hand corner is are the current Senate districts. These are not the districts that will be used in 2020, but these are the districts that were struck down previously. And if you look at those districts, it really parallels the income map and the racial map. If you see the purple district, which actually goes down and takes all of Davie County in addition to the part of Forsyth that is not Winston-Salem, except for this little area here that kind of goes in and takes up the area in Winston-Salem, which is very wealthy. And that clearly is illustrated on both maps. And it's also illustrated on the county commissioner districts, how it goes in and takes that western part of Winston-Salem. But again, I just think that this slide really shows you how both the state general assembly districts for the state senate and the county commissioner districts parallel racial and income lines. So you may be asking, well, how did these districts come to be? What can be done about it? Well, in 1989, the General Assembly passed a law which created the current structure of the Forsyth County Commissioner Districts. And this law stated that District A would be a third of the size of District B, and that it had to continue to maintain this same section of the county. So even when the lines are drawn, it is my understanding, and I contacted the Forsyth County attorney about this, it's my understanding that obviously they have to redraw the lines after the census to account for population changes, but District A, which is that district that's predominantly Black and Latino, has to remain in that same general area, and it has to maintain this ratio of being a third of the size. And so the only way for that to change is for the State General Assembly to pass a law amending this 1989 law. And I thought it was really interesting because you would think that a county would have control over its own county commissioner districts, but nevertheless, the General Assembly actually has much of the control. All right, so I'll toss it back to you, Jennifer.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, these county these county stories are actually really interesting. And I have to get back into screen sharing here. Where are you? And I have to open it up again. Sorry, I think I inadvertently closed my. No, I didn't. Oh, I just had it because I'm on the. Sorry, I'm on the wrong. I had the on a blank slide, which says this Forsyth. So there we go. Okay, so I should be sharing the screen again, hopefully. Oops. So what's the plan? Well, as I mentioned, we'd like to develop a league white paper on county redistricting. It's kind of what we did when we were looking at commissions. And to help prepare for the 2021 redrawing, identify the issues, which we've only really begun to do, and educate voters on this issue, which I think there'll be a lot of interest and bring attention to it. And we want to examine the issue overall and develop some country case studies. And we are especially interested in war stories as to how some of these things came to be, or I remember actually a Republican commissioner in Bladen County telling me that that as it happened, the commission was being redrawn apparently by a Democratic majority at that point, and they drew his house out of his district. They went down the road, picked up his house, went back to the road, and kept going and took him out of his district. So there are a lot of things like that on both sides that have definitely happened. We also think that for the average voter, they probably they probably would feel, and probably would be right, that they can have an impact on how their county is redistricted if they really speak up and demand there be some flexibility there. Another Republican commissioner in Cumberland County told me that when she was on the commission and they were redrawing, I believe this was the 2010 redrawing, that the commissioners who were other than she were predominantly Democrats had formed themselves into groups of 3 so that they could violate the open meetings law, and then they passed the maps around from little meeting to little meeting, and to develop them. And she tried to argue, she said, for something a little bit more open and transparent, and was shot down. So this is not, this is a bipartisan issue on both sides. So we think that there's going to be a lot of interest in this since there is not a whole lot out there. So we've identified some study counties, as I mentioned, and these criteria were that Black voters are a larger share of the total, and that there's racially polarized registration, and that there are competitive elections, relatively speaking. So there's something at risk. In other words, it's not going to be a county that's going to always go Dem or always go Republican, regardless of how you draw the districts. And based on those criteria and crunching some numbers, we picked these counties, which turn out to be predominantly, no surprise, in the east, and 3 of them are league counties. And we just heard a quick case study, a very, very nice overview of Forsyth. And I have not yet talked to my colleagues in Nash and Wayne, so any of you on the call, I apologize. We will be talking shortly. And you know, these are the counties that we're looking at. So that's it. That's all she wrote. So let's let me back out of here, and we can go to Q&A. Okay. So do people have comments, questions? I thought I had the chat open, but there's some stuff in the chat I can see. If anyone wants to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself.
Jennifer, this is Jamesetta.
Hey, Jamesetta, how you doing?
Good.
See what you got? See what you started?
I'm glad. I didn't start it, but I brought it to you. So it's interesting that sometimes you elect, like we do in Orange County, elect one way in the primary and elect differently in the general election. Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, there are a few that are like that. Of course, yeah, I should say Jamesetta is a county commissioner in Orange. As we know, Jamesetta, the reason I'm laughing, the general election in Orange doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot.
Right.
I remember I believe it was 2018, there was no Republican primary. They didn't have enough candidates to actually have any contested races. So the real races for the Orange County offices, you know, let's face it, they're the primary. So, I mean, it could happen, of course, that, you know, somehow that there would be a partisan race. But by and large, so I'm not sure why that was set up that way. I'm sure there was a historical reason, and we may be able to find somebody who knows, or it could have happened a long time ago. I don't really know. So this is what we really want to look into, and we welcome people who want to be on the team and collect these stories and find out. We can of course talk to. I forgot to mention. I should have mentioned. The Wake League did a very interesting sort of initial study to look at the you know what the deal was in Wake, and to describe, you know, how many are at large and so forth and so on, preliminary to getting involved in the next redistricting. You know, they've identified some stories. As we know, there have been challenges of some of the Wake districts, and so one can talk to previous commissioners or people who were around in the legislature or on the commission, or political leaders, party leaders, and so forth, to find out what the story is. Like, why was this done this way? And you know, there's very little documentation, although it may be someplace in the, you know, in the archives, should one dare to venture in there, try to find it. But I think it's much more straightforward to ask. So we'll be looking into that, but I don't know. I haven't started that.
Thanks.
Jennifer, this is Sally Green, and I believe I have a little insight about Orange County's system. I got this from Barry Jacobs, who had been on the commission a long time. Renee can confirm or deny this, but you know, we only went to this combination at-large district system about 10 or 12 years ago, and it had been at-large forever. And so if you, there was a sense of, I mean, I just heard you say a while ago that the league supports nothing, you know, 100% districts, but that idea can lead to a kind of balkanization where nobody in the county is looking after anything but their turf. And that was the worry, that when you go to districts, you would have people saying, oh, I only care about the Orange County schools, or I only care about the Chapel Hill schools. So what they did, whether it's effective or not, I guess is up to interpretation. But what they did was to say, well, so you'll be elected by your district in the primary, but then in the general election, you will be answerable to all of the voters. And that means that you will be responsible to all of the voters because they will have ultimately made the decision to put you in office. That, I believe that was the thinking.
Yeah, that does make sense. And in fact, there are a number of jurisdictions that have, in Mecklenburg, for example, where the majority are from districts, but there are a couple of people who are elected at large, in part to provide that overview. Although, I don't know, Harry, if you want to talk a little bit, yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about, I see your hand up, a little bit about Harry's, Taylor is the leader of our redistricting work in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and he also has been doing some research on looking into the story in Meck and Charlotte. So you want to talk a little bit about what you have found?
Well, I can, but what I wanted to ask you is this. If the first, two parts really. The legislature can override and draw lines for any county they want. Can they do that for any municipality as well?
Yes, and they have. They most recently, I believe the most recent one was Asheville, which I found sort of personally disappointing because they offered Asheville, they realized that if they went from at-large, which they have, and to districts, which they now have, that they could probably elect a Republican from one of the districts onto the Asheville Council. And therefore, they said they passed a bill, and I was in the hall and heard them do it, where they basically said that they gave the council a choice. The council could create an independent commission and to draw the districts, or if they didn't do that, they were going to get the districts that took up the rest of the bill, in which the legislature had drawn themselves a Republican district. And I was just, what disappointed me was this was the first time in history, as far as I know, that the legislature adopted a rule saying you could have an independent commission, even if it was only the Asheville City Council. But then I'm disappointed that the City Council, in fact, did not take that option. And they therefore now they said, we're not going to bow to the legislature, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. But we're not going to bow to the legislature. We're just going to let them draw the districts. What? So they now have the districts as drawn by the legislature. I think that was the most recent one, but there are lots of cases where they've drawn. They drew the Charlotte districts earlier. They do that all the time. Anytime they want, they can do that.
Okay, so the other part of that is this. Charlotte, as I know it, is only one of a handful, like 3 or 4 cities, municipalities in the state that have partisan elections. And almost every other municipality in the state has nonpartisan elections. So we're talking about what would the advantage be to anybody, any city to gerrymander districts if the elections are nonpartisan anyhow?
Yeah, but they're not really.
That's something we should look at when we're doing this. But is there really an advantage to gerrymandering districts if the elections are nonpartisan? So.
Yeah, you can. In fact, the case study, the research that you did kind of actually points that up. I mean, they wanted to engineer something that would enable the business community to basically take over, and they were surprisingly, well, I shouldn't say surprisingly, they were quite explicit about that being their intent to that poor people should know their place and should not try to have a voice in who is running the county. That should be run by business people who are going to adopt sensible pro-business solutions. So, I mean, it's not just party that people fight over. They fight over race, God knows. They fight over other stuff. So I don't know. And there's always something happening at the local level. Somebody trying to get over on someone else.
Well,
no.
I was going to say, we have several questions in the chat.
Yeah, I see Ted. I was going to call on Ted there. You want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Ted Moan, Fayetteville, North Carolina. I don't think anybody else from Fayetteville is on here. I don't
Welcome
aboard. I spent 10 years on the city council and went through the 2011 redistricting for city council. But we're talking Cumberland County, and kind of like Tyler mentioned about Forsyth County. Cumberland County is their election to their commissioners has 2 multi-member districts. The smaller district is packed by the people of color. The larger district is the more white part. So I live in the District 1, which only allows me to pick 2 council members, pretty much people of color. But then my neighbors, just outside of my voting precinct, they get to vote for 3, which is the majority white part of the county. And then we have 2 at large. And I'm very familiar with Maptitude for redistricting. I've used it before, and I've sent the county commissioners some ideas where we need to go to 7 single-member districts, because District 1, you vote for 2. District 2, you vote for 3, and then the entire county votes for 2 at large. That is not the norm for the 100 counties in North Carolina. And so we've already put the county commissioners on notice that once the census data comes out in April, May, or whenever, of 2021.
Probably July, but anyway.
Yeah, and so I just learned about your organization like 2 days ago. So I just wanted to maybe figure out how I can become part of your organization, because what we have here in Cumberland County, just like it's packed. Minorities, in one area, District 1, and they only get to vote for 2, and I live in that district, and I'm okay with that. But then the majority white part of Cumberland County, they get to vote for 3 plus the 2 at large. So I vote for 4. If you live on the other side of the county, you get to vote for 5, and I don't think that's fair. So I just want to throw that out, and I want to learn more about your organization.
Well, I can just, I don't want to take too much time on that. I'd be very happy, to reach out and give me your email, or I'll give you my email, which is just my name, reverse, bremer.jennifer@gmail.com. So dot in the middle, reverse.
Okay, and I was glad to see your map that Cumberland County is one of the test cases. So I've got some people I think that we can potentially help with Cumberland County.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, the Fair Districts NC, I'll just give a very, very brief, because I think we do have some new people on here, is a program, like most states, we're trying to develop a coalition to try to get redistricting reform. It's led by the League of Women Voters, of which I'm a member, and actually a board member at the state level. Tyler's a board member in Guilford, Piedmont Triad, including Guilford and Forsyth and some other counties. So we used to have a league in Fayetteville. It fell apart, it disbanded at some point. I'm not really sure why, but Fayetteville is the only large city where we do not have a league. So we certainly welcome cooperation. We've worked with some folks down there. I won't name names, but we've worked with some people down there, and we would very much welcome working with you. So our website's fairdistrictsnc.org, all one word. Easy.
Right. I've been to your website, and what's crazy is when they did the redistricting following the 2010 decennial census, all 7 current Cumberland County commissioners live in Fayetteville. Nowhere else in the entire county, Spring Lake, Hope Mills, Wade, Falcon, Godwin, Eastover, it was deliberately done 10 years ago. Oh, and I'm done. I'll mute myself.
That's very interesting. I mean, that's an example of, how you can skew a system to get the result that you want. I mean, we like to say that when politicians draw their own districts, voters lose.
And 2 of them live in the same neighborhood. 2 of them live in the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's no, thanks. I appreciate that. Let's see if we have any other, getting the right place here.
We have some.
I see Renee. Hey, Renee, another one of our commissioners. Renee Price.
Hey, I just wanted to clarify a little bit about our system in Orange County. So it was in 2006 that we had a referendum to go from 5 commissioners to 7. And that's when we got into the district where there, I think Sally explained that there were 2, we have 2 from District 2, 3 from District 1, and then 2 at large. And the purpose of that back then was to try to give voice to people outside of Chapel Hill, because Chapel Hill is such, with the population, has such a strong voice, and people that were living in the rural areas, or even up in Hillsborough where I am, didn't really feel that they had a good, strong voice. But I do feel that with the having the at-large and having in the general election, true, it's, you know, it's pretty much a done deal. But it does give me the feeling, though, because I run in District 2, that I'm serving the entire county. That said, there have been complaints, and we are going to be studying that next year, beginning of next year, to look at the way we are holding our elections. And then I did see a comment that Richard Whitted had something to do with this. Unfortunately, Richard Whitted died decades ago. It might have been Moses Terry, but it was definitely Richard Whitted was one of our first county commissioners back in the 70s. So that wouldn't have been him. I just wanted to clarify that. But we will be studying this because, because it's people are feeling as though they're still not getting the representation that they need, and particularly people that are, as you mentioned, I think somebody mentioned that there's really hardly Republicans rarely run. Although I did have to run against a Republican. Being a Democrat, the votes weren't there because of the way that this is where our county makeup. But we need to study it some more. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a real opportunity. It's why if you guys had asked me a year ago, we might have started this study earlier. But yeah, I mean, Chapel Hill, Carborough do have 60% of the population, and according to the old census, and I kind of expect that that's going to be, you know, that probably the area has grown more than relative to the rest of the county, but there's been a lot of growth in Mebane and so forth, so I could be wrong. But with 60% of the vote, Chapel Hill, Carborough is going to tend to dominate in any countywide election. It just kind of, what can you say, 60%, 60%. So yeah, so we're coming up on an hour. I don't know if people want to stay on and talk, but maybe we should allow folks to disappear with our thanks if they wish to do, or we can stay on and talk. I'm happy to keep talking about this forever.
We do have some more questions in the chat that weren't answered. Janet and Manuel have kind of a similar question. Janet was asking how can voters affect the decisions that are made in the process, and Manuel is asking who do we contact to get information about their criteria, I guess, for drawing the districts, or to ask for a public input period.
Very, very good questions. There are other than the fact that districts more or less, one person, one vote does apply at all levels, so they cannot draw a district that has, you know, like, that has more people and yet elects, you know, fewer people. But other than that, there are very few, if any, criteria that are set. But that doesn't mean that you can't set criteria. The commissions themselves can set criteria, and of course the legislature could set criteria. It's also theoretically possible for the voters to set criteria through referendum. Because although we do not have referendum at the state level, whereby people can draft something and put it on the ballot by collecting signatures, it turns out we do have it at the local level. I think realistically that we're too late to have that happen. But nonetheless, one could, in theory, I don't believe going to try to do that, because you have to collect like 5,000 signatures, or I believe it's 10% of the voters in the jurisdiction to get on the ballot. But that's not to say that we cannot have a role, because we can certainly demand transparency and politely. You don't have to scream and yell. But yeah, I mean, we should be asking for transparent procedures. We should be asking for criteria. We should be asking for open discussion of the options. Currently, the commissioners and the council people and aldermen, whatever they are, different localities, draw their own districts. And there is no reason why they could not delegate the preparation of a couple of alternative maps, say, to a commission, should they wish to do so, and have an open process. Or if they're proposing districts themselves, still have an open process to discuss it. It's really, people I think are much more aware of redistricting, and the potential problems around redistricting than there were before. So with all the court cases and all the redrawings and so forth. So there's no reason at all for people to say that people could not get involved, and try to make it a more open process and try to make their voices heard if they don't like it. But people do have to look at the maps and give it some thought, and hear from different people. So we hope that we'll be doing a bunch of educational programs around the state based on the findings of the white paper, and as the basis for encouraging such discussions. And like I say, there's very little out there written, so we think there's an opportunity to start people talking about this, and that's the first step.
Okay. Let me see. Oh, Carl is asking, how can we help with study and redistricting efforts for 2021? Are there opportunities to push for the changes to make the process more fair, or are our efforts already, are there efforts already underway, and we're just here to learn what they are?
Great. I am not aware of other efforts. We started this effort fairly recently, and I don't know that there are other efforts out there. The UNC School of Government did do some guidance for commissioners and so forth back for the 2010, I think it was for the 2000 redrawing. Anyway, back there someplace. It's a very good article. But one of the things that we might produce is some kind of a guide that would not express opinions on specific counties or municipalities, but would talk about the process and what people might be looking for and ask for. The commissioners can do whatever they want, and that includes setting criteria and setting open meetings. The open meetings law does apply, as shown by the shenanigans in Cumberland County. The open meetings law applies to meetings of the commissioners, but does not apply to meetings of staff or consultants for that matter. But we can certainly propose criteria and ways of thinking about these issues. Despite our position on single member districts, I do think single member are probably the same, but I do think there's room for some at-large districts to sort of try to bring things together as well. That I think that you see that in a number of places, but there are definitely some systems out there that have been, as shown by court cases, have been misused. So and really, it's up to the voters to say we want something different.
And I would also add to that, if you haven't already, then please endorse our 5 principles for redistricting reform, and sign up to volunteer if you'd like. I put links to both in the chat.
Yes, and thanks, Tyler. And in our where you can also sign up to volunteer, as Tyler mentioned, and as well as signing the 5 principles. And you can also in there you can put comments as to what you would like to work on. You can email us at the districtsnc@gmail.com, I believe. Is that our email? It just forwards to one of us, so I forget what it actually is. And certainly email us directly as well. So we really welcome people. This is a huge topic. I mean, even I put 12 counties, and even that is fairly dramatic. And if people want to look at their own counties, that is also obviously a good thing to do for counties that we're not studying. And there's a lot that could be done. We really welcome people. If anyone out there is a data cruncher, we would also welcome that. We're going to be able to get, I think, shape files for those of you who are data types of the current counties, because the league's voter guide, which I should give a push for. I saw somebody had it on their picture there. Vote 411, which is vote411.org, which is a very good product. We unfortunately are not covering the whole state for resource reasons, but all the major cities are covered, and major, so where we have leagues basically is what it comes down to. So there's definitely room for reaching out and volunteering on this and covering. So as part of Vote 411, they collect the shape files because when you call up, when you log in or do whatever, so you can't call, sorry, either on your phone or online, you go into Vote 411, you put in your address, it will show you your ballot. And it does that by taking your location and matching that against the shapefiles to see which districts you're in. The shapefiles are just sort of change a map into a program.
Okay. Lisa, I like this question. She says, who decides how we vote? Regular voting, limited voting? Is that the NCGA or county?
They're both right. The NCGA can always overrule whatever a commission or a city council does. But in general, the commissions themselves make those decisions. And in general, they adopt a map by resolution, so by vote of the commission members. So they can, as part of that, decide that they want limited voting or not, or anything that has to do with this. I don't know, was anybody, I don't know, Renee, were you on or James Edwards? I don't think you guys were on the commission in 2011, but does anybody know, did they, was there an open process in Orange on the?
Oh yes, there was a big work study group and they met for over 18 months, a lot of public outreach, absolutely.
No, that's good. I mean, I know lots of Orange.
And I can get you those. We have some minutes from those meetings that I'd be glad to share and send out to you.
Yeah, thank you. That would be useful. Yeah, I mean, getting these documents, and it's really the knowledge of people who are in the system or previously were in the system that's really gonna, be where.
And Barry, Barry Jacobs was part of it, so he's right here in Hillsborough.
Yeah.
Moses, the members, the commissioners at the time are still around.
Yeah, I mean, some of the, obviously when you get back earlier, you start running out of them, but yeah, there's very definitely the commission,
Alice Gordon,
political leaders who were involved at the time in parties or other legislators, etc. I think will be a primary source of information. So this is basically interviewing. There's also data analysis, particularly looking at the racial data. Not so much in our area, but in general across the country, across the state.
Yeah, I just want to point out what is really interesting to me, and I haven't, I looked into Forsyth County mainly. I also took a look at Guilford County, and I didn't realize that the NCGA had so much power over this process. Because it was the same thing with Guilford County. The State General Assembly gets to decide at the end of the day, because I believe the commissioners, even if they draw the districts, they have to be approved by the State General Assembly. So I thought that was
there are a few localities where they have intervened and specifically specified that that they cannot redraw themselves without permission. But in general, they can go in ex post facto or anytime they want and draw the districts for anything from town, city, water board, not water board actually, because those are defined by the water, a more powerful force even than the legislature. But in general, school districts also, we're not doing school boards because that's just too ugly. I can't stand it, and not anything that I have any expertise in myself. So we just left them off the table, but that does not mean that they are not an issue. They are a huge issue across the state. And there are already school districts, I know, at least in Wilmington, Lower Cape Fear, are down in New Hanover, etc., that are working on their school districts. And an interesting thing is their consultant produced, I can't resist this, I haven't gotten to the bottom of this, they produced a map, the consultants produced a report. And in the report, there's a whole bunch of different maps of school districts, like 30 of them or something, based on how many of them, like each, not like each, like junior high school, like which junior high school and which grade school and so forth, like specific school maps. And although the terms black and white do not appear on those maps anywhere, if you search that document, they appear on every map. So they're in a hidden layer, probably, which I found interesting. It's like 38 maps or something, and there's 38 occurrences of the word black and 38 occurrences of the word white. So I found that interesting. But anyway, we're not doing school boards, God forbid. Anyone else? Barbara?
Tyler, do you remember that not long ago the Greensboro City Council was messed with, and we had to get up in arms about it, and they put it off until basically 2021, and there was for reconsideration or whatever. But anyway, they stayed away from that. So
Yeah.
you shouldn't be surprised, but then you may have been at UNCG then and not noticing it as much. But
Oh, no,
same thing that Asheville had to go through in some other places. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Were you done?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Wake County, their districts were challenged, which had been drawn in, I believe 2011. No, I take it back. 2015. They went in again and redrew the districts, and it was for those of you who may be familiar with Paul Coble, he was the redrawer, and those were challenged, and in his position on the commission at the time, and those were challenged, and the court actually went back to the 2011 districts, as I think it was like in August or September or something, that they went back to those, which suggests that those districts were really bad, that they would do it that late.
Jennifer, the event that Barbara's talking about, Senator Trudy Wade tried to single-handedly redistrict Guilford County, Greensboro, and there was so much pushback for that. I still have a T-shirt that says "Kill Bill, Senate Bill S-36." You know, don't mess with Greensboro, because citizens were, you know, marching in the streets and protesting, and she was, you know, roundly defeated. But you know, it was bad business.
Well, it's 6:15. Does anyone have anything else? We certainly would be very happy to continue this on email or whatever. But maybe we should call an official halt to this. It's obvious that it's a lot.
It's Valerie from Nash County, actually, and I got bumped off too, so I had to go out and come back in. But so I don't know if you were able to answer my question that was in the chat, but you said that Nash County was going to be one of your study areas, and you've not gotten here yet. If you have answered it, I'm so sorry for asking again, but if you haven't answered it, what is it that you're going to be studying, and how can we be of help to you?
What we're going to be studying is sort of the history of redistricting in those counties for the county commissions, and potentially for, you know, Rocky Mount or whatever, a little bit. We're not going to be able to get to the municipalities, but there may be some war stories in particular, things that were done or not done. We're not going to be trying to draw maps. We're not proposing to draw proposed maps or anything like that. It's not our place to do that. And it should be done in consultation with the voters, but we're more just trying to flesh out what some of the issues are and how those have played out. And as I mentioned, we selected the counties based on having, because we think that it's not just us, it's pretty obvious that race plays a huge role in redistricting issues in North Carolina. So we selected counties that had a relatively high African-American population, where there was a polarization, where there, you know, between the two parties that was racial in nature, and also, sorry, blanking on the third criteria, but in any case, so we, and those are the ones that popped out of our little analysis. Oh, where the races are competitive.
Okay.
So,
well, I know I'm also the Nash County Democratic Party chair. So I know that there are going to be a lot of people very, very interested in this conversation, namely Angela Bryant, you know, former Senator Angela Bryant,
sure.
And a lot of other people. So I know you're going to have great resources here. And if I can be of any help to you at all in this process, please, you know, contact me, and I'll avail myself to you.
Oh, well, thanks. We need to get, you know, the sign off on the league that we, if we're doing something that will include their county. It's not going to focus on it, but we really welcome, you know, anyone, because it's really those conversations at the local level, talking to the former commissioners and former, you know, like say party leaders and
Sure.
you know, who know what went on.
Yeah, right. And I'm also
other local groups, church groups, and the people who are people
Sure.
can say, yeah, well, let me tell you what really happened. Those kind
Yeah, right. Well, and it's obviously very complicated here with the whole portion of Rocky Mount being in another county. And we're League of Women Voters, twin, counties.
Twin counties, yeah.
And Edgecombe. So it gets very, very complicated in that respect. And how you ever unravel that mess, that's a discussion for a whole nother day and time and century and a lot of time. But yeah, so as in my position as a league member and as a county chair, I just want you to know that I totally support you personally and your work in general, and that we'll find people that can really give you insight into what has happened and what's happening now with the dynamics here. Okay, well, thanks.
Well, thanks a lot. No, I'm relatively new to the state, moved here in 2016. And really, even if I'd been here for 20 years or 30 years, or 50,
Yeah.
I would not know the localities the way the people that live there know what happened. And it's just a question of documenting it. And we remember, we're writing a report. We're not writing a book. We could have annexes and whatever and put it online. If people want to do something longer about their situation,
Sure.
we can work on that. We've gone as far as picking the counties and trying to understand the structures. That's as far as we've gotten.
I didn't get here to North Carolina until 2015. Weather and family brought me here, and honestly had no idea that Rocky Mount, North Carolina existed until I was on Amtrak going from Durham to DC to get arrested along with the Reverend William Barber, Ben and Jerry, and 1,400 other people. And I saw this place. It's like very intriguing. So I got put here, obviously, and doing work. But yeah, it's very complicated, especially if you come from somewhere else. And I think it's really complicated for people who are from here too.
Well, the world is changing, and parts of North Carolina are changing more quickly than others, but we all wrestle, as we know. It's been very much brought to our attention if we're not already aware of it. I mean, I moved here in 2016, like I say, just before the election in October, and I had never I've worked for UNC for 16 years, but in Washington, running a program that mostly did international stuff, and so I wasn't as familiar with the state or domestic politics at all. They traveled a lot, but I mean, it's all about race down here, and that's just it's really important for the state to do what it can to address past and current disparities. It's our future as a state really depends on that. So this, I'm sure, will be, and having a county commission that responds to the voters is obviously a part of that. And a lot of these issues are like for example, it's very common across the state, and this was brought to my attention I was speaking to some folks in Duplin, and I've also spoken in Rocky Mount to your league. I don't know if you were there, but
I was actually. I do remember it. It was about gerrymandering.
So I mostly talk about gerrymandering, and I commented. The mayor commented that in Dublin, in Warsaw, that that the black half of the town does not have sidewalks and the white half does. I think that's the case all over the state.
Yeah, it's true.
So you have these disparities even at that level of who gets streetlights and sidewalks.
Correct. Yeah.
Never mind schools and the health services.
Right.
But yeah, so I think I expect that race will play a major part in this. As I say, I used that like the sort of the markers for where you're going to have a problem with elections and race as really how to select the counties.
Correct. Right. Okay. Well, we're here for you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot, and I have to speak with your leadership to be sure that they don't freak out. But yeah.
Oh no, Melanie's okay. Pat's okay.
I think they'll be okay.
Everything's fine. Copacetic. Thanks.
Okay.
I'll mute.
Anyone else out there? I think it's only a handful of folks left. We should probably wrap this up. Anybody? Last chance. Gone. I'll try to save the chat also. Okay, not hearing anything. Thanks a lot, folks.